You are listening to the Prosper Law Podcast. Learn how to reduce stress, have more time, and make more money. Come on in.
I'm Greg McCollum, and I built a 7-figure criminal defense law firm. I formed Prosper Law to show criminal defense law firm owners who are desperate for success how to grow from under $200,000 to $1 million and beyond. Hi, this is Greg McCollum here with another edition of the Prosper Law Podcast. Our topic today is artificial intelligence for criminal defense lawyers, and we have a special guest, Kerri Coby White. Kerri is the founder of Kerry James, which is a company that helps lawyers improve and polish intake so that they have better conversion rates and are able to get more clients and make more money. She's also the author of the book, The Law Firm Growth Machine. At this time, I would like to welcome you to our podcast, Kerri.
Thank you so much. Delighted to be here, Greg.
Before we begin, some of the people listening or watching this may not know much about you. Can you just give us the benefit of who you are and some of your past and how you got to where you are here today?
Sure. As the origin story itself goes, I am trained to be an educator, and consulting is very much about education and training and helping people do things. And so my background as a teacher, working primarily with gifted students in a middle school program, really prepared me, I'd say, quite well for working with attorneys. Middle schoolers and gifted students have quite a lot in common with attorneys, I find. But these days, and for over, almost 2 decades now. So I spent 11 years in the classroom, certainly a passionate educator. And today I spend the vast majority of my time training and consulting. And as I tell people, that is really teaching taller students with better budgets. It's still very much about teaching others. And so I've been doing really focused on intake and growth as a result of being in law firm marketing. So I left the classroom after my 3rd child and started working in nonprofit. And the nature of nonprofit is very much based on grants. And my grant was not renewed, but I had met all these attorneys on the board of that nonprofit. And everybody was offering me work in marketing, and quite a few different firms at that time. And so I hung a shingle and decided to freelance in marketing, educated myself, online, 4 years of that degree from NYU didn't compare to what I spent a couple $100 learning online marketing. And I very quickly landed a whale of a client in my own backyard. And I was suddenly responsible for a 6-figure monthly marketing budget. And I did all the things and got what on paper looked like fantastic results. And so I remember this like it was yesterday. It was a hot summer day. I was marching into the office pre-COVID when we were all in the office. And I was so excited to sit down with the attorney and his chief of ops to talk about this fantastic marketing we were doing. And I was met with very solemn faces because the stats that I was seeing from a marketing perspective, the clicks, the calls, the form fills, the impression share, those were not clients. They didn't sign a lot of clients. And so I very quickly learned that if I wanted to be respected for my work in marketing, and if I was going to sleep well at night, because I consider it a huge responsibility to be the steward of someone's financial investment in marketing, that I was going to have to really get my hands dirty in intake. And so I dove in deep, very, very deep. And over the years, just honed that skill and started working with others to ensure that if the marketing team is doing its job of making the phone ring and getting those clicks, the intake team is ready to convert. And, the line I've said a million times since then is clicks aren't clients, calls aren't clients, only clients are clients. So we need to make sure that the efforts of the marketing team are not undone by an ill-prepared, untrained intake team.
That really is, you said a mouthful there because, you have this saying always where, people are, I need more marketing. I need more marketing. I need more potential new clients. I need more calls. I need more people contacting me. But then when you look at intake and conversion, and some just small moves there to change your conversion rate, even just say 10% or something, can result in so much more business in dollars, right?
Completely. And the instinct to increase marketing is often putting fuel on that dumpster fire, because if you're already not capturing every lead and converting effectively, and now you're going to throw more, potentially more garbage, the very nature of marketing is casting a net that is going to bring in unqualified leads. That's just an unfortunate fact. And so now we're looking at more volume and still poor intake, and that ends up being a recipe for disaster. And now you're spending more money, and you will often see that ROI go even further down as opposed to up. So there is a very delicate balance, and it's interesting. I was working with a fee-for-service firm last week, looking at their numbers, and we always look a week back, and it was the last week of March, and so this spend had been lower, which is very common. If you had a strong month, it kind of peters out at the end. And so volume was very low, and son of a gun, conversion was very high. And this is an attorney who really wants to go in with more marketing. And to me, until you can see that same conversion rate hold with increased volume, you're spending money that is preventing you from getting at the meat that's already on the bone. And so typically when I talk with a law firm, they often want to talk about marketing. Marketing is sexy. Nobody's all that interested in intake because they think, my intake's good enough. That is a real stranglehold for me. If I come in to consult and you want to take on marketing, the first place I'm looking is intake, because the last thing I want to do is put fuel on a dumpster fire.
That was something, Ken Hardison's a friend of mine, and he's been a mentor of mine. And I remember talking to him because I was fascinated, because he would get paid what I considered large sums of money, where he would go into another law firm and kind of look under the hood. And exactly. He had said that when he did that, he was always confident that they would get value from it, because he would basically just do the ghost calls and look at their intake. And he knew before he even did that it was going to be such a mess that if they were able just to fix it a little bit based on the information and advice he gave them, that they would be satisfied customers. And I think that was always borne out as true.
Yeah. So when I do a deep dive, an intake audit, I get so excited to present my findings to the firm, because I know that the value is there. If I can move the needle even one additional case per month, you're telling me you didn't lose one case per month. One case can often bring a 5 or 6 or even 7-figure change to that firm. And so I tell everybody, you have the luxury of not selling ice cream cones. Every single score is substantial. And so if every single one is substantial and your team understands the value of every single call and every single form and every single chat, then we have to get everybody bought into that same concept. But then we can make sure that we have 100% compliance on things like no missed calls, response times, follow throughs, all those things that collectively make a ton of difference. And so, one of the gripes I have when people tell me about their conversion rates is they'll say, Kerri, I think we're doing really well. We converted 30% of our leads last month. And that means absolutely nothing to me, because if you tell me 30% of your leads, I have no idea if those leads were qualified. And so if you told me we had 100 leads and converted 30, doesn't say much. If you tell me we had 100 qualified leads and converted 30, then you're really struggling on intake. If you had 31 qualified leads out of the 100 leads and converted 30, now we're talking about some strength there. So we really have to dive in. We have to start talking about conversion only as it relates to qualified leads. And we need to be super certain that the qualified leads are separated from, or engaged leads, not even qualified, but engaged leads are separated from unresponsive leads. If you get a lead that comes in the middle of the night and you're chasing it relentlessly, we don't even know the quality of that lead until we engage them. So what I'm typically looking for in terms of the shape of that funnel is 100% of my leads are identified and in the system. at least 98% of those leads have been engaged, meaning we've at least talked to them enough to see that they are in fact a lead. And then of those 98% of the leads that are engaged, depending on the practice area, we're looking at anywhere from 10 to 70% qualified. For criminal defense, one of the great attributes of those leads is that they know whether or not they have a problem, if they've been charged, if they've been arrested, if the police are looking to speak with them. They're pretty self-qualifying at that point. And so then we want to see, do they actually meet our criteria? And that's the only thing that matters. As far as I'm concerned, an unqualified lead is any lead that you don't want to sign. And so if you're looking at, we're only taking on large white collar crime. Well, the guy who had a DUI on Friday night is unqualified. That's not a fit for you. It might be a referral, but I want to know how many of the qualified leads, the leads that fit the criteria for your firm, were converted. And that number I want to see north of 90%. And I know that's a lot harder with fee for service versus personal injury doing contingency fee. But when it's fee for service, I'm looking at your 60 to 75% conversion. For PI up at 95%.
Yeah, that's, because a qualified lead, as I understand it, and I'd like your input on this, is it's somebody who wants and needs the service that, say, I provide. In other words, they need a criminal defense lawyer. They don't need somebody to write a will.
Right.
And it's also, it's in our jurisdiction. We could we're in South Carolina. We could represent somebody in California, but it doesn't really make sense because the cost would be so much higher. And then so that's not necessarily it. Now, the other thing though, and so so you agree that's qualified. They want what you're selling.
I think the terms are so important. So when I'm starting with a firm, the first thing that we need to all get on the same page with is language. What is a lead? And as far as I'm concerned, a lead is anybody who's seeking legal services. So even though you don't help somebody seeking a divorce attorney, they're still a lead. They came in. And the reason I want to know that is because I want to know how much brand attention I have, how much of my traffic is general lead inquiry, because I want to know how many leads do we have before we have a qualified lead. So if you can only tell me about the 40 leads that are in your system this month, that doesn't tell me how many frogs we kissed to get to those 40 qualified leads. And you're going to kiss a lot of frogs. So if you are looking at leads are anyone seeking legal services. And to your point, Greg, not even necessarily in your jurisdiction, because you'll want to have those referral partnerships and the ability to make at least something or at least goodwill off of a referral. Where I distinguish a qualified lead from what you were saying, which is anyone who needs the service I have, that's what I would consider a marketing qualified lead, meaning my marketing team attracted the right type of client, but if it's not right for me, it's still considered unqualified for my conversion metrics. Because if you're saying, we're a criminal defense firm and highly focused on DUI, okay, and then we get somebody who is in an accident. Marketing says this is a DUI case, but you get into the particulars of it, and it really. They were a passenger, somebody else. I don't know. I'm making things up here, but they weren't exactly what you want. And at the end of the day, this is not a client that you're going to offer a contract to. If for any reason, including, this guy is already on his 5th DUI, I don't want to work with this client. So it's marketing qualified, but it's not someone we want to sign. Therefore, we're not going to offer this person a retainer. Now, the difference there is marketing qualified means marketing team, keep doing your thing. You got it right. But I'm not going to count this against my team because I don't want you to convert this one. At the end of the day, the only conversion that matters is the conversion of the leads you wanted to sign. And so now I've got marketing qualified, but they did not meet my criteria. What do we call that one? To me, that is 100% still a reject. I'm not telling my marketing team you're doing anything wrong. I'm just saying this is a personality conflict. This is a troublemaker. This is somebody who's involved in other cases that are not that are a conflict of interest or not a group of an association that we want to have. And so you're saying for whatever reason, I don't want this, I don't want to sign this. My team can only be assessed on their ability to convert cases that we actually will make money off of. It's that simple to me. So if you're rejecting someone, declining someone, abandoning someone, we got to get very clear on that language. All of those things mean we are walking away. We didn't want them. But if we have someone who we want to sign, our choice is to move forward with that client. If they don't sign, that is lost. That is lost money, lost opportunity, a lost client. And that is different than rejected, declined, or abandoned.
In terms of conversion rates, and I understand, the personal injury lawyers, conversion rates can be 98% or maybe higher if the lead comes in and they're having the conversation with them. So with criminal defense, and you referenced 30% or 35% or something like that. Some of the challenges that we have in my own law firm, and we're the complete legal defense team. We're a team of lawyers and paralegals. Most of our clients have never been arrested before, and we defend the accused who have a lot to lose. And our marketing has been that way consistently for over a decade. And so a lot of people coming in, we're trying to filter out people, who would not be able to pay the kind of fees that we charge. Nonetheless, a lot of times when we're talking to people, that's the thing is are they qualified financially?
Right.
And so that's a big factor. What's your opinion on that in terms of criminal defense law? Because if somebody's in charge with a major felony and our fees say $30,000, and they're like, well, we want to hire you, but there's no way. And when you talk to them, they're never going to come up with more than $3,500 in their lifetime. That's just not possible. Yeah. What's your take on that in terms of
so as
counting
far as I'm
that?
concerned, that is tricky, Greg. That is, to your point, an unqualified lead. They do not meet your financial criteria. The difference is those who maybe can, but haven't really come up with enough of a reason to hire your firm at that number. And so I do think that we have to be very careful with criminal defense intake in determining what we really had a shot at. If this person does not have the ability to pay truly, then we can't sign them. They are unqualified. If they have the ability to pay and we haven't converted them, that's another story. And that's where we have to really focus on the value that we bring, what's at stake, really communicating the value proposition that we bring to someone when we have such a high ticket price. And at the end of the day, if there's enough of a desire and there are funds, then we would count that as a loss. I do think it is more nuanced to your point when it comes to can they pay, which is different than will they. In many cases with these first-time offenses in particular that you have a lot to lose, I think that more often than not comes down to the ability to articulate what's at stake, and that's a training issue. So I would consider it a loss if we were not able to sell ourselves on the ability to make this an investment in their future and not an expense at the moment.
And I think what criminal defense lawyers see, and you see a lot of lawyers out there, some of the more successful criminal defense lawyers, a lot of them, are DUI practices because they pick DUI because the DUI demographic is so much broader. And then when you deal with serious felony cases, a lot of good people get charged with felonies. It's always surprised me how often that happens. But and the fees, for us, DUI is $5,000, domestic violence is $5,000, even like a low end kind of misdemeanor is $3,000. So we really don't get pushback from that at all. Right. Where we get the pushback is, somebody gets a felony DUI and we're charging them $50,000. Somebody's charged with sexual assault, and it's it's $50,000, $75,000. That's where we run into the problems.
Exactly, and then I think that value proposition comes in. If this if you don't have the right representation and this tarnishes your reputation long term, you're on you're on a registry for sexual predators, you're unable to get a job, you're unable to pick your kids up at school. What are the long term ramifications that make that $50,000 to $75,000 a good investment as opposed to a large expense? And I think that that's really the point of look, you may find another attorney who will take this on and put money in their pocket, but will they be able to ensure the long-term success that you really need? This is not about we're not just defending you now. We're really trying to protect your earnings potential in the future. We're trying to protect your reputation for decades to come. And that's a very different sales proposition than we can go to court with you. And so I think that we do need to ensure that the team is equipped to sell the value of what you bring as a high ticket, because at that point you may even say something to the effect of, look, a public defender will do that. If that's what you need, is just someone to stand in court with you, you'll get the public defender. What we're offering is a very different solution. We want to protect what you have to come as opposed to what's already happened in the past. And that's what the value is. And I think we have to start selling what's at stake. There was this, it was actually research that came out of a TBI study that was evaluating the emotional center of the brain and what happens when it's damaged. And they found that the damage to the emotional center made it near impossible for people to make decisions. And you would think, well, that should be another part of the brain, but it's not. We have to feel something to feel compelled to actually make a decision. And, I think of that in the same way, if you're not hungry, it's hard to place an order at a restaurant. You're like, I don't know, nothing tastes good because that part of my brain isn't activated. When we know that it requires the activation of our emotional centers to actually make a decision, as an intake person, we have to stop looking at this so logically and go, listen, you can go to that public defender. You'll have someone standing beside you in court. But if you're worried about your ability to get a job or your ability to, attract a mate, to be able to show up at your kid's kindergarten performance, then you're going to need someone who brings a different level of representation to the equation.
But you're totally preaching to the choir with me on that.
Certainly.
And that's something that I've done a lot of, do trainings for people and train my own intake people, because 100% the decision to buy is emotional. And also in the sales call that I teach, they don't buy while I'm talking. They don't buy while they're talking. They buy in the silence. And I'm a firm believer in that.
Letting it stew a bit. One of the questions I never hear people asking is, so how is this affecting you personally? Like, a lot of people will ask about employment, but are you sleeping at night? Are you being a good spouse? Are you showing up present? Are you present to your family right now? They have to start to feel the pain of, well, my parents are devastated. My mother can't look at me without crying. Those are all ways to tap into the emotional centers that, to your point, when they sit with that and bite their knuckles, they know that they need help. And so we have to focus on the questions that get to that pain, unfortunately.
Absolutely. I want to shift a little bit to our topic of artificial intelligence. I know that you've spoken at the PILMA event and other events, and or somebody who has a lot of authority and information and knowledge on artificial intelligence. So can you comment in terms of how you see artificial intelligence affecting criminal defense lawyers in general, if you have
Sure.
seen something in that regard?
Yeah, well, where I think the biggest opportunity from a prospering perspective comes right now is in those that are first to own the AI spaces that people are populating. So how do we get ourselves on the AI platforms? And I've been telling people now for about, what is it already, 4 years, that we're living in beta. We're trying everything. But if we look at SEO as kind of the first time we went through something, so significant, the people who got there first won. and they started building domain authority, and they started training up the internet to recognize and rank them. And we see that to this day with the literal page authority that companies like Nike and Toyota have, because they bought into the internet very quickly. So how are we getting ourselves on those places? What I have found success in, and again, kind of by happenstance, is that the person making the most noise wins. And that there's an old marketing adage that you don't necessarily need to be the best, you need to be the best known. And I love working with clients who are both, because it's a pleasure to market people who are the best at what they do. But unfortunately, we are in a situation where the people who are filling the spaces and making the most noise are being picked up by the LLMs, the large language models. And so how do we do that? What I did for my company that ended up so successful that I started bringing it to a couple of selective clients was we sat down and we said, okay, well, what have we done previously that has proven successful? And I think that's a great place to start when it comes to AI is, what can we train it to do that we've already done well? We don't want to start from absolutely nothing and think that we can do it with AI. It has to be something that we are replicating. And so, I took a decade of presentations and articles I've written and the books I've written and webinars I've done and podcasts, and we trained AI in a very elaborate second brain to think and act and talk like me. And it's almost scary, because I can now spit things out of this brain that I definitely would say those things. It feels like me. And so we were then suddenly able to go from, me publishing an article once or twice a month to publishing an article once or twice a day. And that's when AI really started paying attention to me. All of a sudden, I was getting calls that people had found me on ChatGPT. And so I started doing this for a few select clients that I knew had published books or were talking on video or out there presenting in some way. And I'll be darned if we didn't get the same reaction. We were able to take all of that material, create a content system that literally at the click of a button produces content upon content that is completely tailored to behave like my clients. So if you want to be recognized in AI and from a growth perspective, I really do think we all need to be there. That is what I would emphasize right now is, invest in building the systems that enable you to operate at scale. Where I can't get over that 4 years later, we're still standing here, where there are still routine headlines of lawyers behaving badly and just taking generic AI at its word and running with it. I think we're in a moment in time where critical reading is going to be the most necessary skill of our young people. So bringing associates into your firm, paralegals into your firm, I need them to be hypercritical readers, because the AI is going to be able to produce and write content at very high volumes very quickly. And our job is going to be the overlords of these agents and read critically. If I were an attorney, and not to brag, but I'm not, I would steer away from using anything in AI that hasn't been critically reviewed. The legal work, the fact that attorneys are still getting disciplinary action and fines because of that shocks me. I would focus on it in your growth channels, in your marketing channels, in the making the most noise, the things that you've done well previously that you just don't have time to do all the time. This one bit of our technology isn't where I want it yet, so we haven't published anything. But we literally have AI that sounds like me and can talk for 15 minutes in a podcast with a fake attorney. Like it's absolutely shocking. Now, that said, I do believe authenticity rings. And so I feel very comfortable using AI, especially for my criminal defense clients, to educate. If you had all the time in the world, you would be putting videos on the internet constantly. And that's another secret weapon, is that the large language models are very good at reading transcripts. So make sure you enable transcription on all of your videos, including the ones that you use AI to generate. I've invested significantly in building out the AI side so that I don't have to, we were teasing, being Kerry, the name of the company, means that I am the brand of the business. I need to put that stuff out there, but I'm still running a business and I'm still working with clients. And so I don't have time to do all of that. And that enables me to be everywhere. My children are much bigger now, but when they were little, I used to joke that I'd be fine in life and business and balance if I could just clone myself by next Tuesday. And son of a gun, if we didn't do it. I've got avatars and videos and articles that are being reviewed daily to make sure that they would pass my threshold for approved, and we're doing that at scale. And it really does make it look like I'm a much bigger company than I am, when really, we've got this incredible machine powering our engine.
The thing about the content, that was something that I discovered early on, because there was something that I was going to write an article about. I can't even remember why, but I asked something about growing a criminal defense law firm. So I put it out there in chat. And so then I read the article, wrote it quickly. It had nice headlines and everything. So I started reading it. So I said, okay, I just need to read this and edit it. But the problem was really 80% of what it said, I strongly disagree with.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I go, this is not a good article because I don't think it's true. It came off the internet, but it's misinformation as far as I'm concerned. And so then what I started doing, and I can't remember if somebody told me to do this, or I think I asked AI how to do it. And so then I have all this video content, and I have podcasts, and I've got all this video of me talking about criminal law topics. So then I did that. I transcribed it. I put it in the AI. And so now when I say write an article, I'm write the article in my voice, with the information
brain
that I say. And so, and just like you said, I mean, my output is increased tenfold.
Oh, it's tenfold. This is so important. And this goes back to what I said first, which is you can't do something from nothing. AI needs to be trained. And I guess that would be my one of my primary words of caution to anyone who is looking at how they can use AI more effectively is invest in bespoke, customized AI. These out-of-the-box solutions, I have very few attorneys who find something that really fits the bill to their standard out of the box. The other thing, and being at these conferences, I always feel like everybody comes away with like stars in their eyes of all the things that they're going to do, which is the last thing I want my attorneys doing is, getting a subscription to N8N and make.com. That is not what I want you to do. This stuff is incredibly powerful, incredibly complex. Hire people who know what they're doing. Back in 2022, I mean, with the advent of ChatGPT, I hired someone immediately who has blown me away and been such an asset to my firm. And so, that's something I would say is get yourself out of the weeds, thinking that you're going to study AI and create this at, a certain, if you're busy running a law practice, and hire the people who know how to take what you've done and help you determine how to use AI to do it faster or scalable or better. And that's what we've done. I mean, in 2025, this country produced more solo entrepreneur millionaires than ever before. And that is absolutely because of what AI is helping us achieve.
In terms of the criminal defense lawyers, you've already covered this really about how to improve intake and conversion. But if I ask you like a more general question, almost like a superlative kind of thing, like if a criminal defense lawyer can only do one or two things, because I'm not going to say the one best thing because I don't think that's a fair question, but the things that come to mind, if a criminal defense lawyer could only do one or two things to get more clients, what would your answer to that be? What would be the most important one or two or thing that they could do?
And you're absolutely right that I could bring that in a dozen different directions. There is no single one thing. But one thing that's really been bothering me lately that I think a lot of firms can do a lot better on is just making sure that their website is optimized for conversion. That when you land on that page, you know exactly what to do. I typically look for 5 conversion elements. I want to, and 3 of them should be above the fold. When you open a screen, everything that you see in that first view before ever scrolling is considered above the fold. I need to see a clear, large phone number. I want to see a chat, and I want to see some sort of scheduling, case evaluation, click now, self-serve option. I should see all 3 of those the second I get there. The other thing I think that a lot of these websites aren't doing well is they're positioning the attorney, the firm, as the solution, as opposed to you, the client, with the problem. And so I think I would kind of flip that around, where we focus on the client's problem instead of the firm's solution at that outset. So that would be one thing that would help get more of that traffic engaged and converted. And then the other thing I do, just because, like I said, I could think of a zillion things. But I do think that we have to be clear that the paid advertising space has really taken over page 1 of Google. And so I do think that, SEO will definitely help. But the SEO joke is, where do you bury a dead body? And that's on the second page of Google. The first page is 70 to 90% paid positions. And so if you're spending a ton of money on SEO and you're lucky enough to get someone to your page and they kind of don't know what they're supposed to do when they get there, I think that's a big problem. So it kind of goes hand in hand. Make sure you're optimized for conversion if you're going to get that traffic. And if you're not getting that traffic, there's good value in paid advertising if, and this is a huge if your intake is airtight, because the prices that Google demands for business is at a premium, and it's banking on you having airtight intake. So if you get down the path of paid advertising in any way, and you're missing calls or wishy-washy on the phone or only answering calls, between 9 and 4, you're not going to make money doing it with paid ads. So clean up your intake and then look at marketing more. And then finally, I'll go back to the idea of winning over the AI spaces. That first client that I brought this concept to, he at 70, I guess he was 73 at the time, he's 75 now, went all in. And here we are without him ever having to get in front of a camera. He has 10 million views on YouTube. His site traffic has gone through the roof. They absolutely could not keep up with phone calls anymore. It's funny, I presented this case study at PILMA in January. And this was not a personal injury lawyer. This was a fee for service. And they had 5 times the cases this January than last January. And I honestly didn't even want to present that because it sounded so ridiculous. But, 18 months of flooding the zone, and this guy was on fire. And I do think that that's kind of a little bit of a secret sauce right now that, like I said, we stumbled upon it. I do think the SEO companies are seeing what is helping people get attention in AI. But unfortunately, a lot of them just can't do the content at scale. And so I think that's really been a transformative element of the marketing approach we're taking with our clients.
So a couple of things there. One is the 3 things you said that should be on the landing page. It was the phone number. Then I think you said chat, and then the other thing. So name the 3 things again.
Sure.
Please.
So the other thing is some interactive something. I like, for criminal defense, estimate the lifetime impact of a felony conviction. Some sort of, numbers game where you can increase and decrease a slider to see what the impact is. Something to schedule your appointment now. I'm a very busy woman. It may be 7 o'clock at night before I finally remember to schedule a dentist appointment. And I love when I can actually schedule it. I have put a scheduling widget on every one of my clients' websites, and those have been some of the highest intent leads we get because they are organized people with big problems who need to know that call is taking place tomorrow at 10:30. And so a scheduling widget, or some sort of self-serve option. So on a criminal defense attorney's site, I've done what to expect at your first court appearance, what to expect the first 48 hours, protecting your family's assets while dealing with a charge. Something that someone can say, I need help. I'm going to help myself right now, but now you've got my name and phone number, and hopefully we can talk later. So I like to see those three things. I did say there were 5. So my 5 are a phone call, phone number, chatbot, form fill, some sort of self-serve, and some sort of booking widget. And then, of course, your good old email if necessary. And for any and every of those entry points, I want to be super certain that they're coming into the system. And I guess, honestly, I've seen this shift with PI over the years where everybody now is using some sort of lead management tool. I would strongly recommend that criminal defense attorneys take up more of that posture with leads. I mean, everybody's using case management, but we still see only about 50% using lead management tools.
That's maybe another whole topic that you just triggered in my mind. But for your case study that was so successful, you didn't want to use it at PILMA. If I understand you correctly, are you saying that by having content, the right amount of content, the right volume of content, does that kind of bypass paid SEO or paid search?
In a sense, it is paid, right? They're paying us to do that, but it's not paid ads. So yes,
that's what I mean. Paid ads.
So paid ads. This is a firm that just a value of theirs was not being paid ads. They were happy to educate up the wazoo, and so he was never going to use paid ads or paid traffic even. And so this was our approach was, SEO, traditional SEO companies, they may be doing, 4 to 12 blogs a month. We're at the point where we're doing 10 posts a week. And again, that's only possible because of the engine that we built. And again, the engine is based on decades of practice, and we had a lot of existing material to work with. If you don't have that, it doesn't mean that we can't create that. In my engine, I also put some aspirational writers. I want to think more like this guy and that author. And so if I tell you to, put on my Scott Galloway hat and what would Scott Galloway have to say on this subject, now all of a sudden I'm getting a little bit more data driven on that side. So if you don't have anything yet, it doesn't mean you can't create it. It kind of goes back to how we look at brands in general is, we're reminded regularly to focus on our brand, to have a brand, who you are, what you do, how you're different. And if you don't focus on it, the world will figure it out. They will tell you who you are. And so when I'm working with a client who doesn't have a lot out there, we start by just seeing what is being said about this firm. How are they recognized? What is their presence? And then we can kind of take it from there. And then, of course, resources, everything from Westlaw or online legal sources that are going to help us build a very bespoke brain. I know it sounds silly saying that, but if you could see what it looks like behind the scenes, it's crazy. But we build this bespoke brain so that we have different areas of expertise. I like to think of it as, I'm in charge of all these little agents, my little AI agents, and every agent has a job, but then they work together. So my agents are in charge of, making sure that this is going to be a high-ranking SEO piece of content, but this agent's job is making sure that it really speaks to humans and not just Google spiders. And this agent knows the channel. So I know how we should look at it if we're posting it on YouTube versus if we're posting it on LinkedIn. It's going to look very different. And so you train all these individual agents, and then one task filters to all these guys who work together to develop the best solution. And with another client, I actually did this side-by-side testing of traditional blog content by highly paid writers versus the brain that we built and our ability to produce that content at scale. And on Google's, 5 to 7 metrics that they make required metrics to for ranking, we beat the traditional blog content on a grading scale every time. Our lowest score was a B plus, and our traditional writing lowest score was a D. And so that's why I say, we are in a place where the machines are going to do better writing in things that are meant to hit specific metrics like ranking. But we need to be very good readers to make sure that they're still going to they're still going to be enjoyable and readable and engaging, all those things. So not to mention accurate. To your point, Greg, that if you have something that's spitting out nonsense, which they often do, then you've got another problem. So we are beating the standard and constantly using that information to train the model. And AI is obviously going to be used, and Google knows and accepts that, but it's all in how you use it. And so every one of our blogs goes through what we call a humanizing process, which becomes part of the training. And so everything that is being done with AI has to be part of a feedback loop, which is why I say don't get yourself an N8N account and start making things, because it will become your full-time job. These little minions need to be regularly trained and groomed, and you got to keep them in good form. Otherwise, they can start doing some crazy things, which would be very bad for your brand.
In terms of the content for like your case study there, person, like I understand when you're talking about that, I instantly can think about, okay, well, YouTube videos and things like that, even on other social platforms where it's transcribed, but it's on YouTube or something. But in terms of the blogs, so written content, it sounds like with some of these people, you're doing a lot of written content. If you have written content, you're obviously not putting that on YouTube, right? So where are you putting the written content? Are you putting it on the landing pages? Are you putting it on LinkedIn? Are you putting it different places?
Yeah, so the answer is yes to all of those. So we start with with the engine creating a single blog. That blog is then, it goes back into the engine to be repurposed, and then it is dissected into social media posts. Every social media post is broken down by channel. So this is slightly different for Google Business Profile versus Instagram versus LinkedIn versus Facebook. So it's going to shake it up across all of those channels. And then it's going to take that blog post and transform it into a script based on the attorney's voice and personality. And then it's going to grab that script and feed it to the avatar, which I just came back from a few days at a studio filming with my attorneys so that they have very professional avatars that are then educating their clients and prospects 24/7, literally a video a day. So that one blog article that, all those little agents did their job and made this perfect Google worthy piece is then repurposed and spit into all of these different channels, literally at the touch of a button. And I kid you not, I mean, we hit the run button, and we produce what's called a bundle. And a bundle is one blog and all of the output that comes from that. And we produce those for 30 days at a time. We also have that, the case study I was telling you about with the results that were too good to be true. For that gentleman, he's a thought leader. And so we have AI honing articles on his area of the law every week that, anything culturally. And then we send him 25 URLs every Friday that he gets to review all the topics and say, this is the one I want to write about, I want to write about. And then we take that one article and he writes the machine writes a thought leadership piece based on that attorney's experience and voice and all of the writing he's done over the decades, and spits out a LinkedIn thought leadership piece. We also publish on Medium, and of course, any of the personal profiles that these guys have. So it's very robust. I can say that. But the amazing thing is, we're doing it for, in many cases, less than people are spending on SEO, and they're getting a heck of a lot more content for it, which reminds me of one thing I left out earlier on what would I do to grow the business. And I want to underscore this one. focus on your Google business profile. It is a micro website that every law firm needs to tend to and care for, just like it was their website. Keep it populated, keep it updated, keep it fresh, add content, respond to reviews, request reviews, reply, post to it, add services, put offers. Make sure you do not neglect your Google business profile. It is a very important link to your business.
We're running out of time here, so I really want to thank you for being on here. This there's so much here that you talked about that's so important, and I really appreciate it. Now, this is the Prosper at Law podcast, and one of the things I'd like to ask you and close out with is you're clearly an entrepreneur, business owner, and if you could think, what is one of the most important things that you've done that's made your business more prosperous?
Honestly, obviously the things that we've done in terms of content and video and SEO, we can point to all those things. At the end of the day, my success is being absolutely hell-bent on great service. And if you are serving clients in any way, that has to be the single most important thing you do. I get very excited, just like everybody else out there, when leads come in and you're, getting a proposal out and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, my first priority is to serve my clients and serve them well. And so every person I hire, they know that is what matters most. If there is a client call, a client email, a client need in any way, that comes before everything else. And that is honestly my secret sauce, my secret weapon. It's very true to who I am. And I think that alone is a winning recipe, is be yourself and do the things that people want to work with you for. And for me, that's making others happy. I hate to make it sound so ridiculous and trivial, but it really is. I'm good at what I do because I like making other people happy.
Well, listen, thank you very much for joining me. For all of our listeners and viewers, thank you for joining us. We really appreciate Kerri being here, and I think that hope everyone got some value out of this. I know that I did. Okay, I'm Greg McCollum. See you next time.
If you want to know more, go to prosperatlaw.com. We show criminal defense law firm owners how to reduce stress, have more free time, and make more money. Thanks for listening.